welcome all the nerds, cosplayers, fanboys, fangirls, otaku, and ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming, and boy, oh boy, I am going to have some fun today. Man, I don't even know, because today I get to do a deep dive showcase of one of my all-time favorite movie series. Yeah, man. Godzilla, the king of all monsters. I do have to apologize right now from jump though, because I wanted to keep all these videos 15 to 30 minutes long, but this video goes into some heavy sensitive information that really couldn't be shortcutted, couldn't really be edited down and cleaned up without destroying the integrity of the information, and you'll see what I'm saying in a minute. But I did what I did, what I could with it. I did, get it cut down a lot from what it started out to be. I'm doing some more editing and whatnot on it, but it is what it is. Hopefully you'll be able to hang in there with it, and I think you will be shocked and surprised at where I'm going with this and what really is behind Godzilla, the story, the character. Is more than what you think. So this character has been around for so long that most of us kind of remember about when we started watching it, started having fun with it. Maybe you sitting around in the house with your cousins and y'all just eating cereal and watching it on Saturday morning, something like that. But I discovered Godzilla really kind of by accident when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I remember it, man. I was just flipping channels one night, like everybody, little kid flipping channels looking for something to watch, and on Friday and Saturday nights, they would always have some kind of monster movie on, Dracula, Wolfman, Frankenstein. Y'all remember all of that, right? So one night I was flipping channels and then I saw this old black and white movie playing, but it wasn't just some kind of man, in a nice suit with the fedora hat on, telling some woman how much he loved her while she's just smoking cigarettes and blowing smoke in his face. Them old black and white movies, right?
Oh, Harlow, that company's been his whole life. Well, you couldn't accept a sacrifice like that from him. I know I couldn't.
Thanks, honey. I was hoping you'd say that.
This one was different. I had never seen one like this. This one had this big monster stomping through a city, right? And everything was on fire, and he's just breathing on stuff and it just melt. And I'm like, whoa, what's this? I had never seen anything like that. He just blow this vapor out of his mouth, and like steel girders and tanks would just melt. And I had never seen anything like that before. This is my first time coming across it. And just the whole city was on fire, and I'm like, what? But it's one of them old movies, so I didn't know they made movies like that back in the day. So that was it, man. I was hooked, right? So I sat there hypnotized by this movie until my dad got home from work around midnight, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew it just looked like something that I really wanted to watch. And, but unfortunately, I didn't get to finish it because my dad was like, hey, it was bedtime. You got to go upstairs and go to bed, So I'm like, oh, come on, man. Look, can I, Dad, can I stay up a little? He's like, no, you got to go to bed. It's too late. It's past midnight. Don't worry about it. I'll tell you what happened in the morning. I'll tell you about it. And I'm like, all right. So that was enough for me. Dad going to tell me about it in the morning. So I go to bed. And the next morning when I asked him what happened, all he said was, oh, you didn't miss nothing, man. He stomped around on the houses and then they just killed him. I was just like, what kind of movie summary is that? You know what I'm saying? It was the worst movie breakdown ever. But I still never forgot about it. And I had always wanted to see it after that for myself. I felt like I was missing something. So I found out later that the one that I saw that night was actually the first Godzilla movie that was ever made. It had been made back in 1954, and who even knew that they were making Godzilla movies back that far? Most people don't think about it. They see it on TV. We don't think, though, that this thing went back to the 50s. So yeah, this is from 1954. So what's crazy is that Godzilla movie was one of the historical catalysts that really impacted the entire generation of that era and for decades on down the line. And I mean, it impacted it on a global scale. So a historical catalyst is something that changes the world at some point in its existence forever. Like Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson changed the world, and he changed how the world looked at black people. He changed how the world, listened to music. Like, he changed the music scene forever. Same thing with Prince. Prince changed the world, and he changed the music scene forever. Somebody said, what you mean he changed? He didn't change the world. Man, Prince, everybody was trying to dress like Prince. Everybody was trying to dress like Michael Jackson. They changed the world. These were historical catalysts. All right. Well, Godzilla was another one. You might say, man, how was something like that silly change the world? Get out of here, man. You're tripping. How you gonna change the world with Godzilla? Get out of it. But it's true. That first movie set a bar primarily because they made it so realistic. And everybody in the movie was so serious about it. It didn't even have color, just a black and white film, which actually made it a little scarier because you could never really see the monster clearly. So that added to the mystique of the monster. Like, you're looking at it, what is that thing? And they just show the spines coming up out of the water, or you see these eyes, and then you're like, what is that? So it was kind of messing with people a little bit. Again, we had never seen anything like that. So this movie really has something to it, and it really did scare the hell out of the people of that day. So check out this clip from the first Godzilla movie made in 1954, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Check this out.
This is Tokyo, once a city of 6 million people. What has happened here was caused by a force which, up until a few days ago, was entirely beyond the scope of man's imagination.
Now let's have it, Steve. What about this monster story of yours?
Well, it's big and terrible. Now he's making his way toward the city's main line of defense. 300,000 volts of electricity strung around the city as a barrier. I can hardly believe what has just happened. Now it seems Tokyo has no defense. I'm saying a prayer, George. A prayer for the whole world. Steve Martin signing off from Tokyo, Japan.
See? They were serious about this thing, man. They were serious about this. And in fact, that movie actually qualifies as a horror movie. It has enough suspense in it, and it scared enough people that it really should have been, or could have been listed as a horror film. Especially to the people of Japan in the 50s. Why? Well, did you see that part where he blew his breath and everything started melting? So you saw that in the clip, right? Well, in 1954, Godzilla had radioactive breath. He didn't have the flames and some supernatural nuclear beam shooting out like he's got today. In the original one, he would breathe pure radiation. And it melted the power lines, melted the home, the homes burned up in cinders, and all of this started happening in seconds. And this was different than what you see, a big blast come out. No, it was this, this radiation would come out and melt everything or catch things on fire, make everybody fall out sick, dead, burnt, catch on fire. It's crazy. So why were the people of Japan in the 1950s so impacted by this one Godzilla movie? Well, it's not good. There's a lot of sensitive information, as I was saying, associated with this. But I think those people deserve to have their real story told for once. So the reason, but I think that these people deserve to have their real story told for once. And hopefully I could do it justice. I want to put it out here and, and really relate what these people were going through that caused them to make a movie like this. So the reason that the first film had such an impact on the Japanese people was because they had just gone through World War II, which started in 1939 and it didn't end until 1945. And it was in 1945 that the USA dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Japan. Not 1, 2. On the date of August 6, 1945, an atomic bomb, this was the first one, an atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, killing around 140,000 people. Because you know how close they live. They, live in these really tight areas, So that one bomb is estimated to have taken out about 140,000 people. Three days later, 3 days, on August 9th, 1945, an even bigger, more powerful nuclear implosion bomb means that it draws everything in and kind of explodes it, it kind of destroys it on the inside and then blows it back out. So this powerful nuclear implosion bomb was dropped on Nagasaki killing over 70,000 more people.
President Truman returned from the Potsdam Conference and spoke about the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, describing it as a military base. He later declared, "We shall continue to use it until we completely destroy Japan's power to make war." With no sign of Japan surrendering, the decision was made to attack another city. On August 9, 1945, at 3:47 a.m., the B-29 Superfortress Boxcar, commanded by Major Charles Sweeney, took off from Tinian Island with the Fat Man plutonium bomb on board. The mission plan was almost identical to that of Hiroshima, with 2 B-29s, including the Enola Gay, flying an hour ahead as weather scouts. At about 7:50 a.m. Japanese time, an air raid alert was sounded in Nagasaki, but the all-clear signal was given at 8:30, when only 2 B-29 superfortresses were sighted at 10:53 a.m. The Japanese assumed the planes were only on reconnaissance, and no further alarm was given. At 11:01 a.m., as Boxcar approached Nagasaki, a lucky break in the clouds allowed the bombardier to visually sight the target as ordered. The Fat Man bomb, containing approximately 5 kilograms or 11 pounds of plutonium, was released over the city's industrial valley. It detonated 47 seconds later, at 11:02 a.m., approximately 503 meters or 1,650 feet above the ground. The blast released energy equivalent to 21 kilotons of TNT. The initial fireball created by the explosion reached temperatures of several million degrees Celsius, instantly incinerating everything within a 1-mile radius. The resulting shockwave and intense heat caused widespread fires and destruction, leveling buildings and infrastructure. The blast also produced lethal radiation, contributing to both immediate and long-term casualties. Boxcar and its support aircraft, the Great Artiste, quickly left the area after the bomb release. Meanwhile, Big Stink, which had been separated earlier, spotted the explosion from a distance of 160 kilometers or 100 miles away and flew over to observe the aftermath. The immediate death toll was estimated to be between 40,000 and 75,000 people, with tens of thousands more succumbing to injuries and radiation effects in the following months and years.
After the second bomb was dropped over Nagasaki 3 days later, Japan declared her capitulation.
7 p.m. Eastern Wartime. Bob Trump reporting. The Japanese have accepted our terms fully. That's the word we've just received from the White House in Washington. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the Second World War.
The victorious Americans celebrated their bomb as if it were a gift from God.
Ladies and gentlemen, President of the United States.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. It is an atomic bomb. It is a harnessing of the basic power of the universe.
As a result of these bombings, many died almost instantly, while others died over a period of weeks or months from radiation sickness. Now, everybody who's ever researched a bit of history knows about the horrific bombings in Japan. Well, you all have heard about this. But very few know that after those bombings, 1 year later, the U.S. military showed up at Bikini Atoll Islands, which is a series of small islands 2,395 miles to the southeast of Japan, but is still considered a part of Japan. One of the islands was called Rongelap. I hope I'm saying it right. I'm not probably mutilating this term, Rongelap. And its people were the Rongelapese. Their leader was named King Judah. U.S. military commanders approached the king and asked permission to use their islands to do the work of God. All right. He said something to the effect that by letting them use their islands for their work, that they would be pleasing God. All right. That may sound familiar to some people who know some history, because that same theme has kind of been played out all around the world, when now it was Japan's turn, or the Rongelipe's turn. It was their turn to hear this stuff now. So King Judah had debated back and forth with his people, and after much confusion and sorrowful deliberation among the people, he announced that we will go believing that everything is in the hands of God. The Rongelipe's people were sent 100 miles south by ship to an island called Ley Atoll. So you got the Bikini Atoll Islands. It's a series of islands, and one of them was called Ley Atoll. Then, from 1946 through 1958, the United States military went to work, and they bombed those islands all to hell with over 20 nuclear bombs for 10 years straight.
At the other end of the world, thousands of miles from all the major continents, lies the Bikini Atoll. White sand beaches, warm, crystal clear water, coconut palms. But what looks like a holiday paradise has been a radioactive hell for more than 70 years. Nuclear contamination has made this group of islands permanently uninhabitable. This remote yet so idyllic place was chosen by the USA. For the next 12 years, they were to be an atomic weapons testing site. Today, they have still not recovered from the damage. Jack Niedenthal, himself an American, has been fighting for the rights of the Marshall Islanders for decades.
The U.S. was feeling so powerful at the time. And again, they were in that race with the Russians, but they were feeling so powerful, yet they didn't really know what they were doing. And it's evident everywhere. I mean, you just read through some of these documents that were released. And the idea that the U.S. came and took advantage of that. I mean, they spoke to the Bikinians on a Sunday after church. I mean, how insidious can you get? You talk to them on a Sunday after church, asking if they would be willing to go for the good of mankind and to end all world wars, and that they would be like America's children.
Scene 25, take one. Well, now then, James, will you tell them that the United States government now wants to turn this great destructive force into something good for mankind. Something good for mankind. All right, is that all? Okay, got it.
We are all the children of God, King Judah, chief of the Bikinians, had said and agreed to the evacuation of his people for the good of mankind. 6 weeks before the first bomb tests, 167 inhabitants of the main island and 29 from the island of Enyu were transported to the smaller, infertile island of Rongerik. It was the beginning of an odyssey across numerous islands and atolls that went on for decades. It's Able Day, the 30th of June, 1946, the day of the first test.
At this time, NBC interrupts its regular program schedule to bring you a history-making broadcast, the actual dropping of the bomb at Bikini. In a matter of minutes now, an Army superfortress will drop that bomb on target ships in Bikini Lagoon.
Aboard 22 target ships in the lagoon are the animals.
Put on goggles or turn away. Do not remove goggles or face burst until 10 seconds after the first light.
Crossroads, scene one, take one, A-day burst, USS Panamint.
Thousands of cameras and film cameras were at the ready. Half of all the world's film materials had been transported to the Bikini Atoll.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
The bomb attained an explosive yield equivalent to 23 kilotons of TNT, about the same strength as the one that had destroyed Nagasaki. Of the 93 target ships positioned around the atoll, including ships captured from the Japanese, the former German cruiser Prinz Eugen, but also numerous American cruisers, battleships, and aircraft carriers, 5 sank immediately, while the rest were seriously damaged. Directly after the detonation, U.S. Army units, accompanied by international observers, examined the damage and tried to assess the extent of the radioactive contamination. Most of the 5,400 test animals were killed instantly.
Then, on March 1st, 1954, the United States detonated the most powerful of those bombs, which was a 15 megaton hydrogen bomb that was dropped in the atolls. And that particular bomb was called Bravo Shot. That was the Bravo Shot. 15 megatons. A 15 megaton hydrogen bomb. Okay? Now get this, that bomb in particular was 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima.
6 months after the Soviet Union had tested their first hydrogen bomb, preparations were underway for Operation Castle. The Bravo hydrogen bomb was to be the most powerful device the USA had ever detonated. On March 1st, 1954, the most powerful bomb of all time exploded. The scope of Operation Castle saw 6 further atomic tests carried out by mid-May. For the Romeo test, the first after Bravo, the bomb was detonated on a barge in the Pacific. This test method would later be used for all powerful weapons tests to prevent further contamination of the islands. For the operation's final test, Nectar, the technological advance was clear. With a weight of 2.6 tons, the bomb's explosive yield was 100 times greater than the Hiroshima bomb Little Boy that had weighed 4 tons.
Bravo completely disintegrated several smaller islands and had a radioactive cloud that plumed over 7,000 square miles. An area is about the size of New Jersey. All right. Now, keeping in mind, the natives were only 100 miles away. This thing, the fallout cloud, plumed out over 7,000 miles. All right. So they were damn near right in the middle of it. They were showered with radioactive fallout, like being in a snow. It was like being in a snow blizzard. The way this stuff was coming down, it just coming down out of the air, just falling on them. All right. The 236 natives of the Rongelapes were completely saturated and contaminated with radioactive material. To make matters worse, the U.S. military didn't return to the islands to evacuate the natives for over 50 hours after the Bravo detonation. They obviously wanted to let it soak in, right? You know, you got to get the poison time to get down in there and take hold, you know. So they knew what they were doing, so they didn't show back up for 50 hours. Some of them did still manage to survive, however, and may have wished that they hadn't by the time they realized what was happening to them. So one of the survivors, this is to give you an example, one of the survivors was a woman named Almira Ainiri, and she recalls being awakened by the brightness and the noise of an inferno as hot as the core of the sun. That's the way she described it. She was 18 years old then, she was married, and she was pregnant. She's pregnant with her first child. She recalled the island shook and the air was gray, and it was a snow-like substance that was falling down from the sky. A day later, the U.S. soldiers arrived with Geiger counters, and they found the people of Rongelap weak and vomiting, with their hair falling out and their gums and soft tissue bleeding. You know, your gums and everything bleeding, but imagine it after something like that, this blood just running out your mouth. All right. So the people were then evacuated to the military clinic at Kwajalein Atoll. So again, all these islands with atoll in the name, but you can Kwajalein Atoll, the Ley Atoll, Bikini Atoll, you see what I'm saying? All these atoll islands. So Kwajalein Atoll is where they ended up taking the people to once they came to get them. There, they had to scrub them every day with special soaps. And Almira said that the pressure of the water on her blistered skin felt like needles all over her whole body. You know, like she said it felt like she was still burning. Remember though, that she was pregnant. So after the blast, Aniri gave birth to her son, whom she named Robert. His thyroid glands were so damaged that he became dwarf. He grew up as a dwarf, all right? The glands was then later removed, so they took his glands out, consigning him to a lifelong regimen of medication. Aniri got pregnant again and gave birth, but she said that she gave birth to a bunch of grapes, is the way she described it, that had to be pulled out of her and thrown away, you know, so that was her next pregnancy. She said that she got pregnant 2 more times and gave birth to children who appeared normal, but one died several days later, and the other one was a little boy who she named Alex. Alex survived, but again with damaged thyroid glands. Aniri herself had thyroid problems for the rest of her life, along with cancerous growths and all kinds of things going on, sicknesses and stuff from the fallout. She was never healthy again, and her children, the one that did survive, also always had problems for the rest of his life as well. So by the 1960s, more than 90% of the children who were under 12 years old at the time they were under 12 years old at the time of the explosion developed thyroid tumors. So anyone living in that region, that whole area, still has one of the world's highest rates of abnormalities of the thyroid, which often result in cases of retardation, cretinism, which is a form of retardation, and they also had stunted development. So you have the dwarfism and all of that coming on, you know, misformed body parts, all of that. All right. So Aniri ended up living in Honolulu, and she was one of 118 survivors of the Bravo shot. So then in 1984, check this out. In 1984, the Rangela Peace representatives asked the U.S. government to move them to safer lands because they were still having problems. And the U.S. refused. The U.S. government turned them down. So we ain't taking you nowhere. We don't want nothing to do with it. So after living on radioactive Rongelap for 28 years, 70 islanders were finally removed by Greenpeace. Greenpeace went in there and got them and moved them to Mageto Island. It was 100 miles away. So it should also be noted that both Democrats and Republican presidents had been in power during all of this at various times, and Truman had started it. So President Truman was the one when all of this stuff started with the bombings and such, and Republican Ronald Reagan was the one who refused to relocate them. So he was a Republican, a Democrat started it, and the Republicans was the one that said we ain't taking you nowhere. Okay, so figure out which party you want to support and cheer for during all these elections. It's funny to watch people sitting in there bickering and arguing over which one is better than the other one. So, I mean, history will tell you who you're really dealing with. Too bad more people don't know history. But when you go back and look at it, this is the kind of stuff you find. And it didn't matter who was in power. They all basically have horrible records. You know, let's put it like that. So remember now, all of this is supposed to be about Godzilla, right? So you probably forgot about him already. Man. So, but he's in there. All right. So part of Godzilla was actually sparked as a result of a little side story that was going on in the middle of all of this. So in 1954, on the actual day of the Bravo explosion, all right, a little Japanese tuna boat happened to be passing nearby. It was named Daigo Fukuryu Maru. I may have messed it up, but that's the closest I could get. But it translates to Lucky Dragon 5. The crew had set off to go fishing in the atolls, but they didn't know all this was going on, you know, with the Bravo shot and all of this. They didn't know what this was getting ready to happen. So they down there fishing. So the sea had got hold of some of their nets, tore the nets off of some of their boats. They were having problems and everything, so they out here trying to fish. And then they altered, because of the rough waters, they altered their course and went southward from where they were at. And they ended up only about 80 miles east of the Bikini Atolls at the time that the Bravo shot was detonated. The Lucky Dragon was not damaged by the shockwave from the blast. Several hours later, white radioactive dust made up of radioactive particles of coral and sand fell down upon the ship. The fishermen had attempted to escape from the area, but they took almost 6 hours they were trying to get the nets back up. They were trying to get their stuff together. They were trying to process the fish that they had caught, which was mainly shark and tuna. Okay. And all of this was on the lines, and they were trying to get everything together before they left. And this exposed them to even more of the radioactive fallout. That stuff was coming down on them, right? So the fishermen scooped out they didn't know what this stuff was, so they started scooping it in the bags with their bare hands. They looking at it, trying to see what's going on with this stuff, you know. And one of them, named Oishi, had reported that he took a lick of the dust that fell on the ship, right? He just wanted, he tasted, wanted to see what it was. And he said it was like powdered snow, but that it had a gritty texture, but that it didn't have a taste. So the dust was stuck to their bodies and everything, you know, it was all over the place, right? And they were breathing it in, it was in their ears, it was in their hair, it was irritating their eyes, it was collecting all inside their clothes and everything, right? So radiation sickness symptoms appeared later on that day, didn't take long. And due to this, the fishermen called the white ash Shinohai, which means death ash. So they began to call this stuff death ash. It was making them sick as a dog. They didn't know what to do with it. The ship and its 23-man crew survived the fallout exposure, but during their return to back to port, the crew began having more and more symptoms of radiation poisoning as early as the evening after the exposure. So within a few hours, they started getting sick. They experienced pain, headaches, nausea, dizziness, and diarrhea. Their eyes began to turn red, and they began to develop an itchy mucus was coming out of their nose and mouth and stuff, right? So one crewman decided to keep some of the ash in order to have it analyzed when they got back home. But he kept it in a pouch that was hung from one of the bunks. And so when they went to bed at night, this ash was still there radiating radiation while they was sleeping right next to it. They didn't know what, see what I'm saying? It was tearing them up, man. They didn't know what this stuff was. They was sleeping with it right next to the bunk. And it stayed there for the duration of the whole trip to go back home. By the third day, the men began to develop small blisters on their body that had been touched by the radiation. Anywhere that stuff touched them, they had blisters, all right? Their faces had began to turn dark. You know, they started like losing their complexion. They started turning dark and looking like walking death. You know what I'm saying? So a week into their journey, a week with this stuff, man. And their hair was falling out. And on March 14th, the ship finally docked into March 14th, 1954, the ship finally docked. And the crew was finally able to get help, and they were taken to the Tokyo University Hospital for treatment. The U.S. government under Republican President Dwight D. Eisenhower initially tried to cover up the whole thing. He tried to cover up this whole thing with the Lucky Dragon and all of this, you know, that they wanted to tell nobody about the ship. So they sent 2 medical scientists to Japan to limit the public disclosure and study the effects of fallout on the ship and the crew under the pretense of helping with their treatment. See? So they go down there, act like they trying to help, but really they was just still doing experiments. And then they covered the whole thing up. So they wouldn't tell nobody nothing. Nobody knew about it. So to that end, they sequestered the victims and declared that the site where they were at was off limits. Nobody could go around there anymore. And then later on, the United States paid reparations to one of the survivors who had now passed. And so to his descendants and to his widow, his name was Aikichi, And to his widow and children were paid the Japanese equivalent of about $2,500. All right, great, right? So that was the tragedy of the Lucky Dragon 5. And it's an ironic name, isn't it? And this incident was really kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. You know, after World War II and all of what they went through with that, with the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, then they come down here, now they bombing out the atolls. And just that little fishing boat alone was enough to put it over the edge. And a whole anti-nuclear movement kicked off in Japan. And it was hot. I mean, it was like this really, they was out in the streets. They were doing like, you know what I'm saying? Like you see over here. They was out in the streets, man. They was like rioting. They did not like this. Something got to change, you know. So I won't say they was rioting, but they were protesting. Let's put it like that. So it was a whole movement that began to kick in. And this came especially from the fear. Here's what really kicked it. It was the fear that the fish, remember there was a fishing boat, that they were afraid that the fish had been allowed to go out into the market. They didn't want to throw the fish away, and they really felt like that they had taken that contaminated fish and put it into the market and out for everybody out there to consume, and which tells me that people started getting sick and didn't know why, and they said that's probably that bad fish off of that ship. And so did they do it? Did they let it go? Did they let it go out? They did do an examination of the fish, which tells me that they were considering whether or not they should put it out there or not put it out there. And the fact that you had a protest, you had a movement going that was saying that the contaminated fish had been put out there, it probably was. You know, I mean, why would you even be inspecting fish off of a contaminated ship? You take all that crap and get rid of it, man. But if you're looking at it, that means you're trying to see what can be saved. That's what it tells me. So, as a result of all of this, in 1954, the first Godzilla movie was released. The original Japanese pronunciation of it was Gojira. We say Godzilla, for them it's Gojira. And in some of the movies, you still hear that name. They still say that name in some of the movies. So you can now see why Godzilla has been on TV and movie screens around the world since 1954. Japan will never let him disappear from the world. They will always broadcast him, find some way to bring him back into the mainstream because he means too much to them. It's part of their culture now. All right, he's an icon for them. Godzilla is a representation of a deadly, radioactive, merciless beast that leaves nothing in its wake except absolute devastation. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Godzilla was created as a representation of America. And now you know why Japan is so serious about their Godzilla movies, and why the first one especially was filmed in such a serious and somber tone. Now here we are today, almost 70 years later, and almost nobody knows any of that history, nor do they care. Today, most people consider Godzilla to just be a corny, silly, childish sci-fi monster for kids, especially if they saw any of the early Godzilla movies. You know, he's jumping around and dancing and all this silly stuff. But by the 60s and 70s, there was a new Godzilla movie that was made almost every 1 or 2 years. It was just prolific. It was everywhere, all right? And on Friday nights and Saturday mornings, you could get all the Godzilla you wanted. You know, it was everywhere, man. They were playing them back-to-back Godzilla movies. Godzilla marathons was on Saturday, all day Saturday, just Godzilla, one movie after the next. All right. So there were so many Godzilla movies by the late 80s that even I was tired of watching them. You know, I was, a big fan, but by the 80s, I seen them all. I seen it up and I watched them all 2, 3, 4 times. I was done. All right. So as soon as I saw one was on, I watched it for a few seconds, just out of curiosity to see what it was, see which one it was, because I'd seen them all, as far as I knew. And then I turn it off and go ride my bike and go play video games or whatever I was going to do. Been there, done that, seen it. I can get going. I'm going to ride. I'm going bike riding. I'm good. Some of them were just too silly. Even for a preteen boy who loved the character, I couldn't get into some of it. But something changed by 2014. And Toho Pictures, who developed Godzilla, Toho Pictures decided to work with several other studios to reboot the entire franchise. It was working with American studios now. They said, we're going to start it all over again, but we're going to do it right this time. And they began using the absolute latest in cinematic and special effects technology. With the 2014 release of the new Godzilla movie, he was back and better than ever. And in many of the new movies, there's usually a little fishing boat out there somewhere in the ocean that is the first thing that gets destroyed by Godzilla when he first shows up. See what I'm saying? See how they hold on to their culture, man? See how they still put a little fishing boat in all their movies, man. That's they paying honor and respect to the people that really went through it. You see what I'm saying? Most people wouldn't pay that any attention, but now you know what it means. And now you know why if you see a Godzilla movie with the first thing being destroyed is a little fishing boat, now you know what that's about.
All units, this is 7 November Golf.
The target's heading right at us. He's too fast.
Panamanian government evidence of passengers dead or alive.
All right. And it's always a fishing boat and it's always got tuna on it. You see what I'm saying? So with that being said, check out the trailer for the 2014 reboot of Godzilla. Check this out.
We're not fooling anybody when you say that what happened was a natural disaster.
Because what's really happening is that you're hiding something out there. And it is going to send us back to the Stone Age.
In 1954, we awakened something.
Well, there's nuclear tests in the Pacific. Not tests.
They were trying to kill it.
You have no idea what's coming.
The arrogance of man is thinking nature is in our control. And not the other way around.
Yeah, see, they doing it now. They got him together now. So this new modernized version of Godzilla is called the Legendary Godzilla because Toho Pictures joined with Legendary Entertainment. That's the American company that they hooked up with, Legendary Entertainment. And whether or not it's actually American, it's changing hands and different companies have been involved. And some people say it's owned by China. Some people say it's owned by America, but either way, is multiple companies involved with taking this thing to higher and higher levels. That's what it's about. So the Legendary versions are the ones who are now producing these new incredible Godzilla movies. They have even gone so far as to create a whole kind of alternate world that Godzilla lives in. So it's not like he's just here and blowing something up and whatever and then he's gone. They have a whole ongoing world where Godzilla exists, okay, along with dozens of other monsters, including King Kong. Yeah, they got him in it now, all right? And all these giant creatures are now called Titans, okay? So among the Titans, there can only be one alpha, one leader of the pack, and all of the others must submit to the power and the authority of the alpha. All right, so one of the best Godzilla movies ever made was called Godzilla King of the Monsters, released in 2019 by Legendary Entertainment again. And in this cinematic battle royale, Godzilla's position as Alpha was challenged by a creature that was not of this world, Ghidorah. So Ghidorah, and actually sometimes they refer to him as King Ghidorah because he was taken over as the Alpha. This thing was much bigger than Godzilla, way more powerful. And the trailer for this movie, this thing was much larger than Godzilla and way more powerful. So the trailer for this movie was cool, man. It really doesn't do justice. It was a good trailer, but it really just does not do justice for how good the movie was and how well made that it was. But check it out, man. This is where they got it now. You got to check this out.
What we are witnessing here is the return of Titans.
How many of these things are there?
17 and counting.
That's messed up.
Mothra, Rodan, Ghidorah.
Oh my. They're moving like a pack. They're hunting. They all respond directly to an alpha. We stop this Ghidorah. We stop them all.
Is there another creature that might stand a chance against him?
My God, Zilla.
Our planet will perish, and so will we. Unless we set Godzilla free.
Oh, yeah, sure. Let's bring him in for a beer. No, this time we join the fight.
Run.
This is Godzilla's world. We just live in it.
Damn right.
The visuals, man, is insane, right? Absolutely insane visuals on this, and you should be able to hear it, man. If you hear it on the surround sound, it's crazy. Like, you can actually hear one monster over here, one monster over here. You hear them coming towards each other. It's a whole nother thing, man. You gotta watch these on the big screen with a surround sound system. It's a whole experience. After that movie, Godzilla still only had one other Titan that had yet to submit to his alpha status. He had yet to come face to face with King Kong. He may not be as Kong may not be as big as Godzilla, but you already know that a normal gorilla can toss a car around with one hand like it's nothing, right? So what can a gorilla do that's the size of King Kong? See? So we're gonna go in on that one on the next video and decode that movie. We're gonna go deep in on it and the hidden origins of King Kong, and we're gonna get into it, man. He got a story to tell too. Just like you heard the Godzilla story, Kong got a story too. So we gonna go in on it. And in closing, I just want to say, most people just watch these movies and really just believe that these are they believe these studios spend hundreds of millions of dollars just to entertain people and to generate hundreds of millions of dollars. All right, that should tell you something right there. They don't need your money. They don't need your money. They already have money. They already have hundreds of millions of dollars. So why would they go through all of the trouble of spending that money just to earn it right back with a little extra profit on top? It's because these movies are far more than just entertainment. These movies are how they communicate and tell you truths that you aren't supposed to know. You'll never hear about this stuff in school. So you're not really supposed to know this stuff. But by planting subliminal messages in the films, they can get information across to you, show you what really went down, show you what's really going on, behind the scenes. You'll never hear about it. You'll never know about it. But it's right there in the movie under your nose and you don't know what you're looking at. There's a little formula that I came up with a while back after I started seeing so much information coming across in these movies that was never presented, in school or anywhere else that you would go to normally to get information. You never see it on there. But you watch these movies and then a lot of questions get answered if you watch it and really start to take it serious and take notes on what you're looking at. And so one of the things that I have found, and just remember this phrase, this will get you through a lot of questions and information. The lies are on the news. The truth is in the movies. Write that down. That'll get you a lot of answers down the road. And then when you watch these movies, get you a little pad and pencil, start taking notes. Or remember what you see and then go back and check it out later. Research what you just saw, and you'll find that a lot of what you was looking at was actually true. Check it out. No matter how crazy it is, there's some truth in there somewhere. Check that out. So this kind of thing is a never-ending source of entertainment for them. You know, for these elite who are putting this stuff out. And they show you the truth, and they tell you who you are, and they tell you where you came from, right in your face. And they watch the dull-minded masses dismiss it and go watch reality TV, and they don't pay no attention to what you just missed over here. All right? It's like telling somebody, hey, don't go downtown at noon. Don't go downtown at noon because there's some guys down there that's gonna be waiting to jump you. Don't go down there. And the person, man, go ahead, man. Ain't nobody down there after me, man. Go ahead, mind your own business, man. I do what I want to do. And then they brought off and go downtown, and you see this fool on the news later on, and you like, I tried to tell him. It's almost at that point you don't want to see nothing happen to anybody, but it's almost comical because of the fact that you told him and he didn't believe it, and he went down there, and then you saw what happened. Well, this is what goes on with these movies. They tell us what's really going on. We don't believe it, and then we still following some other garbage over here that they have already told you wasn't true, but we don't want to let go of it. So we reject the truth and we follow the lies. Okay? So that's got to be somewhat entertaining for them to see that happening over and over and over. So you see the amazing story that was hiding in Godzilla's origins all of this time. But everything has hidden origins and codes buried in the background. Most people just don't go bother to dig for it, and they don't want to hear about it. Well, I do, and I love it. But aside from its outrageous origins, this new era of Godzilla is just a fantastic roller coaster ride of fun. It's fun for the minds, fun for the eyes and ears. It's a bunch of eye candy. You know, you love it, man. If you're into action, adventure, sci-fi, you'll love it, you know. But if you watch it with the surround sound and all of that, it takes it even farther. It takes it into a whole nother level. So if any of you were not into Godzilla back in the day, because you thought maybe it was a goofy man in a rubber suit running around, you know, I ain't watching that crazy stuff, I think you should give yourself a treat and go do a big movie night with Godzilla 2014. Start with that one. Start from the beginning and then work your way up to whatever is the newest release at this point in time. Spend a little time with the biggest and baddest of them all, Godzilla.